the gunshot that shattered the autumn morning silence in Johnson City. Texas sent Savannah Norris stumbling backward against the stagecoach door, her worn leather bag tumbling into the dusty street as the driver clutched his shoulder and cursed. It was October 1878, and she had arrived at the worst possible moment, right in the middle of a robbery that would change everything about her carefully planned future. "Everyone stay down," shouted a masked rider, his revolver gleaming in the harsh sunlight as his companions circled the coach like wolves. Savannah pressed herself against the wooden panels, her heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. She had traveled all the way from Philadelphia with nothing but the clothes on her back, and a single bag containing her late mother's Bible and a faded photograph. She was supposed to marry Thomas Garrett, a businessman she had never met but who had promised security through letters exchanged over 6 months. The masked men were rifling through luggage when another sound cut through the chaos, the thunder of hoofbeats approaching fast from the north end of town. Savannah lifted her head just enough to see a rider bearing down on the scene, his hat pulled low, a rifle already rising to his shoulder. He fired a warning shot into the air that made the bandits wheel their horses around in confusion. "That's Owen Irving," someone shouted from a nearby storefront. "Clear out." The name meant nothing to Savannah, but it apparently meant something to the thieves. They scattered like startled crows, firing wild shots as they galloped away in 3 different directions. The man called Owen Irving pursued them only to the edge of town before circling back, his horse's sides heaving as he dismounted near the stagecoach. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of creek water in summer. Dust covered his clothes, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone who had spent his entire life in the saddle. When he looked at Savannah, still pressed against the coach, something shifted in his expression from professional concern to something softer. "You hurt, miss." His voice was rough from the dust, but not unkind. Savannah shook her head, not trusting herself to speak. Her legs felt like water beneath her skirts. Owen reached down and picked up her fallen bag, brushing the dirt from the cracked leather before handing it to her. Their fingers touched briefly, and she felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. "Welcome to Johnson City," he said with a wry smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Usually we save the excitement for Saturday nights." Despite everything, Savannah found herself almost smiling back. "I appreciate the rescue, Mr. Irving. Just Owen." He turned to help the wounded driver down from his seat, calling for the doctor. The street was filling with people now, merchants and townsfolk who had hidden during the shooting emerging to assess the damage. Savannah stood uncertainly, clutching her bag, wondering where Thomas Garrett might be and why he had not appeared. A portly man in a suit too fine for Frontier, Texas, pushed through the crowd. "Miss Norris." "Savannah Norris from Philadelphia." "Yes, that's me." The man's face was grim. "I'm Harold Watson, attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news about Thomas Garrett." Savannah's stomach dropped. The man led her toward the covered walkway in front of the general store, away from the dispersing crowd. Owen followed at a respectful distance, leading his horse by the reins. "Mr. Garrett passed away 3 weeks ago," Watson said bluntly. "Cholera, it came through fast. We sent a telegram to Philadelphia, but you must have already departed." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Savannah gripped the wooden post beside her, fighting to keep her composure. She had sold everything she owned to pay for the journey west. Her mother had died 6 months earlier, leaving debts Savannah could not cover. Thomas Garrett's proposal had seemed like providence, a chance to start fresh. Now she stood in a strange town with no prospects, no money, and nowhere to go. "I understand this is a shock," Watson continued. Mr. Garrett did not have much, but he left instructions that if anything happened to him before your arrival, his property should go to you anyway. It's not much, just a small plot of land about 5 miles outside town and a cabin that needs considerable work. He left it to me, but we were never married. He felt responsible for bringing you all this way. It was his wish. Watson pulled papers from his jacket. If you'll sign here, the land is yours. Savannah stared at the documents, her mind reeling. Behind Watson, she could see Owen listening, though he was pretending to check his horse's shoes. Something about his steady presence was oddly comforting in the midst of this disaster. "What's on this land?" she asked. "Nothing much now. Used to be a small ranch, but it fell into disrepair after the previous owner died. The cabin has a roof and 4 walls. There's a well and a small barn." Watson's expression softened. "It's not much for a lady alone, Miss Norris. You might consider selling it and using the money to return east." Pride straightened Savannah's spine. She had no life to return to in Philadelphia. "I'll keep it." She signed the papers with Watson's pen, her hand steady despite the trembling she felt inside. When Watson left, she stood alone on the walkway, still clutching her bag, trying to figure out what to do next. The land was 5 miles away. She had no horse, no wagon, and the sun was already past noon. "I can take you out there if you want." She turned to find Owen standing closer now, his hat in his hands. Up close, she could see the kindness in his face beneath the hard edges carved by sun and wind. He was perhaps 25, only a few years older than her own 22 years. "I could not ask you to do that. You have already done enough. You are not asking, I am offering." He glanced down the street where the stagecoach driver was being helped into the doctor's office. "Those bandits have been hitting coaches for weeks. Someone needs to track them, but that can wait a few hours. You need help more." Savannah wanted to refuse out of pride, but practicality won out. "Thank you. That is very kind." Owen helped her onto his horse, then swung up behind her. The closeness was improper, but there was no alternative. Savannah held herself stiffly as they rode through town and out into the open country beyond. The landscape was beautiful in its harsh way, all golden grass and scattered oak trees beneath an impossibly blue sky. "You got family back east?" Owen asked after a while. "No. My mother passed in April. We had no other relatives." "I am sorry. And you, do you have family here, just me?" "My folks died when I was young. Been ranching on my own since I was 18. Got a place about 10 miles north of town." He paused. "What Watson said about that land is true. The cabin is rough. You are going to need supplies, and winter's coming." "I will manage." She felt him nod behind her. "I believe you will." The cabin, when they reached it, was worse than Savannah had imagined. The roof sagged on one side. Several window shutters hung crooked, and the entire structure looked like a strong wind might blow it over. But the walls were solid log, and when Owen pushed open the door, the interior was dry and mostly clean, just dusty from disuse. "Well," Owen said, looking around, "could be worse." "Could it?" Savannah set her bag on the rough wooden table, fighting back tears. "Sure, could be on fire." The absurdity of it made her laugh despite herself, a sound that bordered on hysteria. Owen looked at her with concern, then started moving around the cabin, checking the fireplace, testing the floorboards, examining the roof beams. "Structure is sound," he announced. "Needs cleaning and some repairs, but it will keep you warm and dry. You got food?" Savannah shook her head. She had eaten the last of her bread on the stagecoach that morning. Owen headed for the door. "I will be back." "Wait, you do not have to," but he was already gone, his horse's hoofbeats fading into the distance. Savannah stood in the empty cabin, suddenly alone with the magnitude of her situation. She had no money, no food, no real idea how to survive in this place. She walked to the window and looked out at the land that was supposedly hers, acres of nothing, stretching to the horizon. Then she remembered what her mother used to say. God does not give us more than we can handle, and sometimes He gives us exactly what we need, not what we want. Savannah rolled up her sleeves and started cleaning. By the time Owen returned 2 hours later, she had swept out the worst of the dust and cobwebs, wiped down the table and chairs, and discovered that the cabin actually had a small loft accessible by a ladder, where a straw mattress lay rolled up and relatively clean. Owen arrived with a pack horse loaded with supplies: flour, beans, coffee, salt pork, a few vegetables, firewood, and even a blanket. "I cannot pay you for this," Savannah said, embarrassed. "Did not ask you to." He started unloading, carrying everything inside. "Consider it a welcome to Johnson City." "Why are you helping me? You do not even know me." Owen paused in the doorway, a sack of flour over his shoulder. "Maybe that is exactly why, because I do not know you, but I know what it's like to be alone and starting with nothing." He smiled slightly. "Besides, you got a determined look about you. Seems a shame to waste that." They spent the rest of the afternoon making the cabin livable. Owen repaired the worst of the shutters while Savannah organized the supplies and figured out the fireplace. He showed her how to prime the well pump and warned her about which plants around the property were poisonous to livestock, should she ever get any. As the sun started to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Owen prepared to leave. He stood in the doorway, hat in hand again, and Savannah realized she did not want him to go. The thought startled her. She had known this man for less than a day. "Will you be all right here alone?" he asked. "I will have to be. I will ride out tomorrow, check on you." "You do not need to do that. I know." He settled his hat on his head. "I will anyway." After he left, Savannah sat at the table and ate beans heated over the fire, the silence of the prairie settling around her like a blanket. It was different from city silence, which was never truly silent at all. This was vast and complete, broken only by the wind and the distant call of a coyote. She should have felt afraid, but instead she felt something else: possibility. True to his word, Owen returned the next day with more supplies and tools. He fixed the sagging section of roof while Savannah worked on making the cabin more like a home, using an old crate to fashion a shelf for her few belongings. They worked mostly in comfortable silence, but sometimes they talked, small conversations that revealed pieces of themselves. "How long have you been ranching?" she asked while helping him steady a ladder. 7 years on my own. Worked for others before that. It is a hard life, but it is mine." "Do you ever get lonely?" He considered the question seriously. "Sometimes, but I prefer honest loneliness to bad company." Over the following weeks, Owen became a regular visitor. He never stayed long, never improper, but he always found reasons to check on her, bringing supplies, making repairs, teaching her skills she would need to survive. He showed her how to shoot his rifle, how to read the weather, how to preserve food for winter. In return, Savannah cooked meals that reminded him of home, mended his shirts, and listened to stories about the land and the people who lived on it. The town of Johnson City slowly became familiar. Savannah made a few trips there, sometimes walking, once riding behind Owen again when he had business with the general store. People were curious about her, the mail-order bride who never married but stayed anyway. Some women were kind, like Martha Simmons, who ran the boarding house. Others were suspicious, whispering behind their hands. "They think I am a scandal," Savannah told Owen one afternoon while they were repairing the barn door. "Let them think what they want. You are not doing anything wrong. People might talk about you two spending so much time here." Owen hammered a nail with more force than necessary. "Let them. But Savannah knew it bothered him more than he admitted. She saw how the men in town looked at him with speculation, how the women whispered. She did not want to ruin his reputation for her sake. "Maybe you should not come so often," she said quietly. Owen stopped working and looked at her directly. "Do you want me to stop coming?" "No," she admitted, "but I do not want to cause you trouble." "Then it is settled. I will keep coming and people can think what they like." November brought cold winds and the first frost. Savannah's small garden, which she had planted too late in the season, yielded only a few hardy vegetables. She was learning the rhythms of this life, but it was hard, harder than anything she had done in Philadelphia. Her hands, once soft, were now calloused. Her back ached from hauling water and chopping wood. But she was surviving, and more than that, she was beginning to feel something she had not felt in years: contentment. Owen noticed the changes in her. She was thinner but stronger, her face sun-touched despite her attempts to stay covered. She moved differently now, with a confidence born of self-reliance. And when she smiled, which happened more often these days, something in his chest tightened. He had not meant to fall in love with her. It had happened gradually, like the changing seasons, until one day he realized he thought about her constantly, looked for excuses to ride out to her land, felt lighter just being near her. But he held back, unsure if she felt anything for him beyond gratitude. Then came the day the bandits returned. Owen was at his own ranch when a neighbor rode up with news. 3 men had been seen heading toward the Garrett property. Owen's blood ran cold. He saddled his fastest horse and rode hard, his rifle loaded and ready. He arrived to find Savannah standing in her doorway with his rifle raised, 3 mounted men keeping their distance in her yard. She was aiming steadily, her voice calm but firm. "I said leave. There is nothing here for you. Come on, lady, we just want a meal and maybe a few supplies." "That is not too much to ask." "It is when you are thieves and I am alone," one of the men laughed. "Alone is right. Who is going to stop us from just taking what we want?" "I am." Owen's voice cut through the tension. All 3 men turned to see him approaching, rifle already aimed. Recognition flashed across their faces, the same men from the stagecoach robbery. "Irving," one said, "this does not concern you. It does when you are on this property." "Miss Norris, are you all right?" "I am now," she said, relief evident in her voice though she kept the rifle steady. The standoff lasted only moments before the 3 men realized they were outmatched. They rode off with muttered curses, and Owen watched until they disappeared over the ridge before dismounting. Savannah finally lowered the rifle, her hands shaking now that the danger had passed. "Did they hurt you?" Owen asked urgently, checking her over. "No, I heard them coming and got inside with the rifle. I was not sure I could actually shoot them if it came to it." "You would have." He took the rifle gently from her hands. "You are braver than you know." "I was terrified." Brave is not the absence of fear. It is standing your ground despite it. They stood close together in the doorway, close enough that Savannah could see the worry in Owen's eyes, the tension in his jaw. She realized suddenly that he had been afraid for her, truly afraid, and the knowledge made her heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with the bandits. "I should have been here," he said roughly. "You cannot be here all the time." "Why not?" The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. Savannah's breath caught. "Owen, I need to tell you something." He took off his hat, running a hand through his hair in a nervous gesture she had never seen from him before. "I have been coming here for weeks, telling myself it was just to help, just to make sure you were safe. But that is not the whole truth." "What is the truth?" "The truth is I think about you constantly. I wake up wondering if you slept well, if you have enough firewood, if you are happy. I look for reasons to come here because being near you makes everything better. And I know I have no right to feel this way, that you came here to marry another man and maybe you still love his memory, but I cannot help it." He met her eyes. "I am in love with you, Savannah." Her heart felt too big for her chest. "I never loved Thomas Garrett. I never even met him. I agreed to marry him out of desperation, not love. And now I find myself watching the horizon every day, hoping to see a rider approaching. I look forward to your visits more than anything. You have been so kind to me, so patient, teaching me everything I need to know. You have never made me feel like a burden or a charity case, even though I came here with nothing." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I bring only my heart, Owen, but if you want it, it is yours." The words seemed to break something loose in him. He closed the distance between them and cupped her face in his hands, searching her eyes for permission. When she nodded, he kissed her, gentle at first and then deeper, pouring all his pent-up feeling into it. Savannah wrapped her arms around his neck, losing herself in the warmth and safety of his embrace. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "Not because you need security or a home, but because I love you and I want to spend every day of my life with you." "Yes," Savannah whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." They married 3 weeks later in the small church in Johnson City, with Martha Simmons standing up for Savannah and Owen's foreman, Pete, standing up for him. Savannah wore a simple dress that Martha had helped her make from fabric Owen had bought at the general store. It was not fancy, but when Owen saw her walking toward him down the aisle, his eyes shone with such love that Savannah knew she had never looked more beautiful to anyone. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. When the preacher asked if Owen would take Savannah as his lawfully wedded wife, Owen's voice was clear and strong. "I will." And when the preacher asked Savannah the same, she looked into Owen's creek water eyes and said, "I will with all my heart." They sealed their vows with a kiss that made Martha sniffle and Pete cough awkwardly. Afterward, there was a small celebration at the boarding house with cake and music. Savannah danced with her new husband, marveling at how different this was from what she had imagined when she left Philadelphia. She had expected a marriage of convenience to a stranger. Instead, she had found true love with a man who had seen her at her lowest and helped her become strong. That night, Owen brought Savannah to his ranch, which was now their ranch together. It was larger and better maintained than the Garrett property, with a solid house, a full barn, and good grazing land. But Owen had made sure to tell her that the Garrett land was still hers, that he had no claim on it. "We can sell it, or work it, or leave it as it is," he had said. "Whatever you want." "I want to keep it," Savannah decided. "Maybe one day we will have children who will need their own land to build on." The thought of children with Savannah made Owen smile. They had a whole future ahead of them to fill with family and happiness. Their first months of marriage were a period of adjustment and joy. Savannah threw herself into learning everything about running a ranch, working alongside Owen from dawn to dusk. She learned to ride properly, to help with the cattle, to manage the books and supplies. Owen was patient with her mistakes and generous with his praise when she succeeded, but it was not all work. In the evenings, they sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the prairie. They talked about everything and nothing, building the foundation of intimacy that would sustain them through hard times. Owen taught Savannah to play cards, and she taught him to dance properly. They laughed together, planned together, and discovered the deep satisfaction of being truly known by another person. Winter came hard that year, with snow that buried the fences and winds that howled around the house like wolves. But inside, Savannah and Owen were warm, spending long evenings by the fire, talking and reading aloud from books Savannah had ordered from a catalog. Owen discovered that his wife had a passion for poetry and stories, and he loved watching her face as she read, the way her expressions changed with the narrative. "Read me another one," he would say, just to keep her reading, to watch the firelight play across her features. By spring, Savannah had news that made them both ecstatic. She was expecting a child. Owen became almost comically protective, insisting she rest more, work less, take care of herself. Savannah found it both touching and frustrating. "Women have been having babies for thousands of years, Owen. I am not made of glass. You are carrying the most precious thing in the world to me. Let me fuss a little." Their son was born in October 1879, exactly 1 year after Savannah had arrived in Johnson City. They named him James after Owen's father. He was a healthy baby with Owen's eyes and Savannah's dark hair. And from the moment he was born, he owned both their hearts completely. Watching Owen with their son made Savannah fall in love with him all over again. He was gentle and attentive, changing diapers and walking the floor at night when James cried. He sang off-key lullabies and made silly faces that made the baby laugh. He was the father Savannah had always hoped her children would have. Life settled into a new rhythm. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Savannah's head for numbers and organization complemented Owen's practical knowledge and hard work. They expanded their herd, hired 2 more hands, and became well respected in the community. The women who had once whispered about Savannah now came to her for advice on everything from preserving food to treating sick livestock. But their greatest joy remained each other and their growing family. A second son, William, arrived in 1881, followed by a daughter, Rose, in 1883. The house rang with children's laughter, and the land they had built together became a true home. One evening in the summer of 1885, Owen and Savannah sat on their porch watching their 3 children play in the yard. James, now nearly 6, was teaching 4-year-old William to throw a rope while 2-year-old Rose toddled after them, determined to keep up with her brothers. "You ever think about that day you arrived?" Owen asked, taking Savannah's hand in his. "Every single day." She squeezed his fingers. "I was so lost and afraid, I thought my life was over. Instead, it was beginning." "Yes." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I came here with nothing, expecting a marriage of convenience to a stranger. Instead, I found you and a love I never dreamed possible. You said you brought only your heart, but that was everything, Savannah. Your heart was all I ever needed." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in colors that never grew old, no matter how many times they saw them. The land stretched around them, familiar now, beloved. This was home. This was family. This was the life they had built together from nothing but love and determination. James called out, successfully roping a fence post, and Owen applauded. William tried to copy his brother and fell in the grass, laughing. Rose clapped her hands in delight, not entirely sure what was happening but happy to be included. Savannah felt her heart swell with such fullness she thought it might burst. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what? For seeing me that day, for helping me, for loving me." Owen lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "Thank you for staying, for being brave enough to build a life here, for choosing me." "Always," Savannah promised. "In this life and whatever comes after, I will always choose you." As the years passed, their love only deepened. The children grew strong and confident, shaped by parents who loved each other and showed them what a true partnership looked like. James became a skilled horseman, William had a head for business, and Rose inherited her mother's love of learning and her father's determination. In 1888, Savannah gave birth to twins, boys they named Samuel and Daniel. Owen joked that they were trying to fill the whole ranch with children, but his eyes shone with pride every time he looked at his family. The ranch continued to prosper. They eventually did develop the Garrett property, using it to raise horses, which became a lucrative side business. Savannah never forgot that the land had been given to her by a man she never met, a final kindness from Thomas Garrett that had led her to Owen. She made sure a small marker stood on the property, thanking him for his generosity. Owen's reputation as an honest rancher and fair employer spread. Men came from miles around looking for work, knowing they would be treated well. Savannah became known as a woman of compassion who often helped new settlers, especially women, get established. She never forgot what it felt like to be alone and desperate, and she made sure no one in her area suffered that fate if she could help it. But through all their success and growth, what mattered most to both of them was each other. They still took time to sit on the porch in the evenings, still talked for hours about everything and nothing, still looked at each other with the same love that had bloomed in those early days. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, Owen gave Savannah a gift, a journal bound in fine leather. "For your stories," he said. "You are always telling the children tales. Write them down." Savannah was touched beyond words. She began writing that very evening, starting with the story of a young woman who came to Texas with nothing but hope and a heart full of dreams. She wrote about a cowboy who rescued her, not just from bandits, but from loneliness and despair. She wrote about love that grew slowly, rooted in respect and kindness, blossoming into something that sustained them through everything life threw at them. The children loved to hear their parents' story. They would beg for it at bedtime, especially Rose, who was a romantic even at a young age. "Tell us about when Papa proposed," she would plead. And Savannah would tell them about the day after the bandits came, about their father's nervousness and his beautiful words, about how she had told him she brought only her heart. "But Mama," James said once, "you brought more than that. You brought yourself, and that was everything Papa needed." Owen, listening from the doorway, had to turn away to hide the tears in his eyes. Time moved on as it always does. The children grew and eventually began families of their own. James married a schoolteacher from Johnson City and built a house on the western section of the ranch. William moved to Dallas to run the business side of their horse operation, but visited often. Rose married a doctor and stayed in town, close enough to visit weekly. The twins, Samuel and Daniel, worked the ranch with Owen, showing no interest in leaving the land they loved. By 1900, Owen and Savannah were grandparents many times over. The ranch was now one of the largest and most successful in the area, but Owen had begun talking about stepping back, letting the younger generation take over. "I want time to spend with my wife," he told his sons. "I worked hard all my life. Now I want to enjoy what we built." So they did. Owen and Savannah spent more time on their porch, in their garden, taking slow rides across land that had become as familiar as their own heartbeats. They traveled a little, visiting San Antonio, and even taking a train trip to see the ocean, which Savannah had always dreamed of doing. But they always came home to their ranch, to the place where they had built their life together. One autumn evening in 1903, 25 years after Savannah had arrived in Johnson City, they sat together watching the sunset. Owen was 50 now, his hair touched with silver. Savannah was 47, still beautiful to him, her face lined with the evidence of a life well lived and much loved. "You have any regrets?" she asked him. Owen thought about it seriously, then shook his head. "Not a single one. Everything I did, every choice I made led me to you. How could I regret any of it? Even the hard times, especially the hard times. They made us stronger." He took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her knuckles in a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. "What about you?" Savannah smiled. "My only regret is that we could not have more time. One lifetime does not seem like enough. Then we will have to make the most of what we have." And they did. They watched their grandchildren grow, saw the ranch pass into capable hands, enjoyed the respect and love of their community. They had become a legend of sorts, the mail-order bride who never married her intended, and the cowboy who loved her. People told their story as an example of how love could bloom in unexpected places, how two people with nothing but determination and devotion could build an empire. But to Owen and Savannah, the empire did not matter. The land and cattle and success were nice, but they were not the point. The point was each other. It had always been each other. As Owen's 50th birthday approached, the family planned a large celebration. All the children and grandchildren came, filling the house with noise and laughter. There was food and music and dancing. Owen stood at the center of it all, Savannah by his side, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Look at what we made," he whispered to her. "Look at what we made together," she corrected. That night, after everyone had left or gone to bed, they walked out to the spot where Owen had first brought Savannah all those years ago. The old Garrett cabin still stood, weathered but sturdy, a reminder of where it all began. "I was so scared that day," Savannah remembered. "Everything I had planned had fallen apart. I was standing in that awful cabin wondering how I would survive. And then I came back with supplies. You came back with hope." She turned to face him, taking both his hands. "You gave me a reason to keep going. You showed me I was stronger than I knew. You loved me when I had nothing to offer but myself. That was all I ever wanted, just you." They kissed under the stars, the same stars that had watched over them for 25 years. The kiss was tender and familiar, full of history and promise. When they broke apart, Savannah rested her head on Owen's chest, listening to his heartbeat steady and strong. "I love you," she said. "I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "I love you too," Owen replied. "You are my heart, Savannah. You always have been." They stood there for a long time, two people who had become one, looking out over the land that represented their life together. In the distance, lights glowed in the main house where their children and grandchildren slept. Closer, on various parts of the ranch, more lights marked the homes of the extended family they had created. This was their legacy, not just land and prosperity, but love. Love that had started with a gunshot and a rescue, that had grown through kindness and patience, that had been tested by hardship and strengthened by joy. Love that had created a family and a home and a future that would extend far beyond their own lives. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, Savannah thought about the young woman she had been, desperate and alone on a dusty street in Johnson City. She could hardly recognize that person now. That woman had thought she needed security and a home. She had not understood that what she really needed was someone to see her for who she truly was, to value her for herself, to love her completely. Owen had given her all that and more. He had believed in her when she struggled to believe in herself. He had stood beside her as an equal partner, not a superior or a savior. He had shown her every day through actions and words that she was precious to him, and she had given him the same. She had brought only her heart, but she had given it completely, holding nothing back. She had worked beside him, supported him, loved him with everything she had. Together they had created something beautiful. In bed that night, lying in the darkness with Owen's arms around her, Savannah whispered, "Thank you for choosing me." "Thank you for staying," Owen whispered back. They fell asleep like that, intertwined, complete. The years continued to pass peacefully. Owen and Savannah grew old together, still partners in every sense. They watched their grandchildren have children of their own. They saw the new century unfold with its changes and challenges. The automobile came to Johnson City, and electricity and telephones. The old Wild West became a memory, replaced by something more settled and civilized. But on their ranch, some things remained constant. The land was still beautiful. The cattle still grazed. The horses still ran. And Owen and Savannah still loved each other with a depth that only grew richer with time. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered again. There were so many of them now that they had to hold the celebration outside, with tables stretching across the yard. Owen stood to make a speech, his voice still strong despite his 55 years. "When I met my wife," he began, "she had just arrived in town with nothing. No money, no prospects, no family. The man she came to marry had died. She was alone in a strange place, and she had every reason to give up." He looked at Savannah, his eyes soft. But she did not give up. She chose to stay. She chose to build a life here. And when I told her I loved her, she said something I have never forgotten. She said, "I bring only my heart, but if you want it, it is yours." There were murmurs of appreciation from the assembled family. Several of the women were already reaching for handkerchiefs. "Her heart was all I ever needed," Owen continued. "It was enough to build all of this, our family, our home, our life. Everything good I have came from loving Savannah and being loved by her." He raised his glass. "To my wife, who brought everything by bringing herself." "To Savannah," everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Savannah stood and kissed her husband, not caring that the whole family was watching. Some things were more important than propriety. Love was one of them. The party continued late into the night, but eventually, Owen and Savannah slipped away to their favorite spot on the porch. They sat in the swing Owen had built years ago, rocking gently, watching the stars. "Do you think we will have 30 more years?" Savannah asked. "I plan on it. I am not ready to let you go yet." "Good, because I am not ready to go." They sat in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts but perfectly content in each other's presence. This was what love looked like after 30 years. Not the burning passion of youth, though that still flickered between them, but something deeper. A knowing, a completion, a sense that this person beside you was the other half of yourself. As 1909 turned to 1910, Owen began to slow down more noticeably. He was 57 now, and years of hard ranch work had taken their toll on his body. He moved more carefully, rested more often. But his mind remained sharp, and his love for Savannah never diminished. Savannah, at 54, remained active and engaged. She still kept the books for the ranch, still tended her garden, still welcomed grandchildren and great-grandchildren to her table. But she noticed Owen's fatigue and adjusted their life accordingly, making sure he did not overdo it, spending quieter afternoons reading together or simply sitting in companionable silence. Their children tried to get them to slow down even more, to let the younger generation take over completely, but Owen was stubborn. "I will rest when I am dead," he told James. "Until then, this is still my ranch." But he did make concessions. He stopped riding out to check on the cattle every day. He let the foreman make more decisions. He spent more time with Savannah, which was really what he had wanted all along. On a spring day in 1912, Owen and Savannah were working in her garden when he suddenly stopped, leaning heavily on his shovel. Savannah looked up and saw his face had gone pale. "Owen, what is wrong?" "Just dizzy, I am fine." But he was not fine. Savannah helped him into the house and sent for the doctor. By the time the doctor arrived, Owen was feeling better, insisting it was nothing, but the doctor's examination revealed the truth. His heart was weakening. "You need to take it easy," the doctor said firmly. No more physical labor. Plenty of rest, and no stress. Owen protested, but Savannah cut him off. We will do whatever it takes. Over the following months, Owen gradually accepted his limitations. He spent more time sitting than standing, more time watching than doing. It frustrated him, but Savannah made sure he knew his worth was not tied to his productivity. You have worked hard your whole life, she told him one evening. You have provided for this family and built something lasting. Now let others do the work. Your job is to rest and heal. My job is to love you, Owen said. That is the only job I care about. Then you are succeeding beautifully. They adapted to their new normal. Owen directed from his chair on the porch, offering advice and guidance to the younger men. Savannah stayed close, always within earshot, ready to help if he needed anything. Their children visited more often, wanting to spend time while they could. One afternoon, Rose came to visit with her children. While the kids played in the yard, she sat with her parents on the porch. Tell me again how you met, she asked. Owen and Savannah exchanged a smile. They had told this story hundreds of times, but they never tired of it. There was a gunshot, Savannah began, and Owen picked up the thread, telling about the stagecoach robbery and his rescue. They traded the narrative back and forth, finishing each other's sentences, adding details the other had forgotten. Rose listened with tears in her eyes. I hope I love my husband as much as you two love each other after all these years. You do, Savannah assured her. Love is not about the big dramatic moments. It is about the everyday choice to stay, to be present, to see the other person truly and value them anyway. Your mother is right, Owen added. Romance is easy when everything is new. Real love is what you build day by day, choice by choice. Rose hugged them both before leaving, holding on a little longer than usual. She could see what Savannah tried to hide, that Owen was getting weaker, that time was running out. But she also saw that her parents faced this truth together, as they had faced everything, side by side. As summer turned to fall in 1912, Owen spent most of his time in a chair by the window, watching the ranch operate without him. It was hard for him, but Savannah was always there, reading to him, talking with him, simply being present. They spoke of old times and good memories, of their children and grandchildren, of the life they had built together. I have been thinking, Owen said one October evening, 34 years after Savannah had arrived in Johnson City, about what you said that day I proposed. What did I say? That you brought only your heart. He took her hand, his grip weaker than it used to be but still warm. You were wrong, you know. You brought so much more than that. You brought strength and determination and intelligence. You brought kindness and compassion. You brought a capacity for love that transformed my entire life. Savannah's eyes filled with tears. You brought all those things to me too. We were lucky, were we not, to find each other, the luckiest people in the world. Owen was quiet for a moment, then said, I am tired, Savannah. So very tired. She knew what he meant. He was not talking about the kind of tired that sleep could fix, but she was not ready, would never be ready to let him go. Then rest, she said, her voice breaking. I am here, I will always be here, I know. He smiled at her, that same smile that had made her heart flutter 34 years ago and still did. That is how I know everything will be all right. That night, surrounded by family, Owen Irving passed peacefully in his sleep. Savannah was holding his hand, and his last words were her name, spoken with love. The grief was crushing. Savannah felt as though half of herself had been torn away. For days, she moved through the motions of living without really being present. The funeral was well attended, with people coming from all over to pay their respects to a man who had been respected and loved by many. But it was in the quiet moments after, when everyone had left and Savannah was alone in the house that had been theirs, that the loss truly hit. She would never hear his voice again, never feel his arms around her, never sit on the porch with him watching the sunset. Her children wanted her to move in with one of them, but Savannah refused. This was her home, the place where she and Owen had loved each other. She would not leave it. "Are you sure you will be all right alone?" James asked. "I am not alone," Savannah said, touching her heart. "He is here. He will always be here." She kept her promise to stay. In the months that followed, Savannah threw herself into writing. She filled journal after journal with stories, but mostly with the story of her and Owen. She wrote about their meeting, their courtship, their marriage, their life together. She wrote about his kindness, his strength, his love, and as she wrote, she felt him with her. Not in any supernatural sense, but in the way that people who love deeply carry each other always. She heard his voice in her memories, felt his presence in every corner of the house, saw his influence in their children and grandchildren. She lived another 8 years, staying active and engaged with the ranch and the family. She was the matriarch, the one everyone came to for advice and comfort. She told stories about Owen that kept his memory alive, making sure the great-grandchildren who had never met him knew what kind of man he was. On October 15, 1920, 42 years to the day after she had arrived in Johnson City, Savannah died peacefully in her sleep. She was 64 years old. Her children found her in the morning, lying in the bed she had shared with Owen, a smile on her face. On her nightstand was her journal, open to the last entry she had written. "Tomorrow is the anniversary of the day I arrived in Texas. I came here with nothing, expecting a marriage of convenience to a stranger. Instead, I found Owen, and through him I found love, family, purpose, and home. I brought only my heart, but it was enough. It was always enough. We built a beautiful life together, Owen and I. Now I go to him, carrying that same heart, still his, always his. Until we meet again, my love." They buried her next to Owen, on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The headstones stood side by side, simple but elegant. Owen Irving, 1857–1912. Beloved husband, father, grandfather he loved well. Savannah Norris Irving, 1856–1920. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother she brought her heart, and it was everything. The ranch continued to prosper under the management of their descendants. The story of Owen and Savannah became family legend, passed down through generations. Young couples in love would visit their graves, hoping some of that enduring love would bless their own relationships. The town of Johnson City grew and changed, but the Irving Ranch remained a constant, a reminder of what two people could build when they loved each other completely. The old Garrett cabin was eventually restored and maintained as a historical site, a monument to where it all began. And on autumn evenings, when the sunset painted the Texas sky in brilliant colors, people swore they could see two figures sitting on the porch of the Irving Ranch house, watching the light fade, hands intertwined, together as they had always been and always would be. The end.